Let's look at 3 signs of the times for September 2022. Seiko watches. You know them and you love them. 2 models in particular lead Seiko sales on Chrono 24, and they're probably not what you're expecting. Next, women have been gaining long overdue attention in the watch world in recent years. We'll answer the simple question, what are they buying? And finally, prices for hype watches are still falling, but the come down is starting to slow down. We'll look at a few key models to see what the future may hold. Welcome back to Time is Money, where the clock is always ticking and money is always moving. For many, Seiko is their first watch, and for many others, Seiko is their next watch. We at Chrono 24 have looked at the marketplace data to find the top-selling Seikos for 2022, and the results may surprise you. Also, if Seiko watches are your thing, be sure to check out the Short on Time episode we did about the brand and our tour of the Seiko Museum in Tokyo. If we look at the top 5 bestsellers, we see various Seiko 5 models in the mix. At number 5 is the travel-ready SSK003K1. At number 4 is the sleek 37mm SNXS79J1. The military-style SNK805K2 takes the number 3 slot. And here's where things get interesting. We have a pair of Arabic dial Seiko watches at number 1 and number 2. These numerals would be more accurately described as Hindu Arabic or Indo-Arabic, but that's a separate video. However you refer to them, the 42mm SNKP21J1 and the number 1 best-selling 34mm SNK063J5 are the surprise hits for Seiko watch sales on Chrono 24 this year. Now, if you were active in the watch collector corner of Instagram, you may have seen these popping up with increasing frequency over the summer. We looked at the data and we saw spikes in sales correlating to posts from one popular account. Watches of Espionage is a niche but influential account covering the intersection of watches and spycraft, run by an anonymous former CIA operative. Followers of the account will remember that WOE published an article detailing his love for these Seiko references in early August of this year. Subsequently, sales for these 2 references spiked significantly on Chrono 24 and other platforms in the following weeks. We reached out to the account admin for commentary, and he says the following. In January 2022, I stumbled across the Arabic dial Seikos while shopping online. Having spent much of my adult life living, working, and traveling in the Middle East, I have a strong affinity for the rich culture and language of the Arab world, and I have always been fascinated with Arabic dials. I quickly ordered the larger 42mm SNKP21J1, and after a few weeks on the wrist, posted it on my Instagram feed, Watches of Espionage. It was a unique and undiscovered but mass-produced watch, a rarity in the internet age. It is also affordable at sub $200. Even first-time buyers could afford it, a fun way to dip their toe into the world of horology. This is, of course, one rather specific example of social media affecting the watch market. Much has been said about these effects on hype watches like the Rolex Daytona, the AP Royal Oak, and the Patek Philippe Nautilus. But it goes to show that watches at all price points are fair game for this type of influence. And it indicates that the connection between digital conversations and market value is here to stay. This next one goes out to all the ladies in the audience, or frankly, anyone who's into watches. We at Chrono 24 have taken a top-level look at which watches sell the best among the fairer sex. Women have always been present in watches as consumers, as writers, as consultants, as executives, and more. Recent years have seen an uptick in the visibility of women in the industry. There are groups for enthusiasts and professionals like Watch Femme. Female collectors are cropping up more and more on Instagram. And you have women in high-level leadership positions like Jenny Wright, CEO of the Americas for Audemars Piguet, or Catherine Rainier, Global CEO of JLC. When it comes to purchasing preferences among female consumers, we see a few trends emerge. Women are twice as likely to purchase two-tone watches and 3 times as likely to buy yellow gold. Quartz watches are twice as popular among women at 31% versus 16%, although we should note that many watches designed as women's watches tend to feature quartz movement, so the deck is slightly stacked from the start. You could say the same for mother of pearl dials as well, which seem to be the only statistically significant outlier for dial preference among the sexes. 48% of watch sales to women on Chrono24 are for Rolex, and that's compared to 37% for men. Women are also 3 times more likely to buy Cartier than their male counterparts. As a quick rundown for the top sellers, we've got the 26mm Datejust in the top slot. The Cartier Panthère, known as the It Girl watch by Dimepiece fans, comes in at number 2. The 39mm Speedmaster Reduce lands at number 3. The Breitling Lady J sits at number 4. For a statement piece, we've got the Tag Heuer Monaco Caliber 12 at number 5. And as an honorable mention, that 34mm Arabic dial Seiko that we mentioned earlier comes in at number 6. Finally, when it comes to purchase price, women spend more per watch than men at 4.1K on average versus 3.6K for the fellas. Now we turn to the hype watch segment of the market for a quick check-in. In our August episode of Time is Money, we covered what is shaping up to be the biggest watch story of 2022. Prices for in-demand watches falling for the first time in years. But what has happened in the market since then? Much of the discussion around hype watches has centered on 3 models: the Rolex Daytona, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and the Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711. For the luxury market, supply on Chrono24 is the highest it's been all year across the board, continuing with the upward slope that began in January of 2022. There are likely 2 narratives at play here. 1, sellers began liquidating their supply earlier in the year as prices continue to reach astronomical levels. And later on, professional dealers and private collectors listed more watches for sale through spring and summer as prices began to fall, thus hoping to sell high before it was too late. When we look at demand, it's more of a mixed bag. We're currently seeing slight upticks in recent weeks for models like the current production Rolex Daytona, Rolex Submariner, and the AP Royal Oak. This is more pronounced in the US than it is in the EU. But demand is still sliding slightly for the Pepsi GMT and the Batman GMT. The greatest spikes in demand came at the beginning of the year when the collective enthusiasm around investment watches was at its peak. The demand since then, meaning the number of offers and purchase requests on Chrono24, has largely stabilized from springtime onwards, even as prices decreased and supply surged. Zooming out a bit, it's important to note that the average sale price of these watches on Chrono24 is still well above their suggested retail price. We're looking at roughly 3x for the Daytona and roughly 4.5x for the Royal Oak and the Patek 5711. And for what it's worth, sales volume on Chrono24 is up 42% compared to this time last year. On the lower end of the market, the Moon swatch has largely leveled out following high secondary market prices upon its release. What retails for a few $100s sold for an average of $2,000 on Chrono24 in March of this year. Those prices have since settled closer to $500 on our site. There is one notable exception here. It's a blue Moon swatch, but no, it's not the Tiffany blue Mission to Uranus version. The darker blue Mission to Neptune has nearly doubled in market price in the last few months. And the reason behind this is somewhat surprising. The blue dye used for the bioceramic case has been known to leave a blue residue on the wrist of its wearers. The swatch group subsequently stopped selling this version amidst these concerns. This decreased supply on the market and led to an increase in demand. Now prices on Chrono24 range anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. I guess it goes to show that economics is not always rational. And there you have it, a snapshot of the secondary watch market for September 2022. We'll see you next month for another episode of Time is Money, because time only moves in one direction, but the market does not.